Yeah, my name is Steen Nepper Larsen. I'm associate professor at Aarhus University, dealing with sociology, pedagogy and philosophy. Ich bin der größte Philosoph Dänemarks, 2,04 Meter. I've been asked to do a thought experiment, deliver an essay. En français, essayez, to try to do something. Now I'll try to do this thought experiment dealing with the questions, how would we go on if all migration was set free, if we had no immigration, either with I or E limitations, and we could live in a completely different world where humans were freely to move? What would happen? First and foremost, we have to deliver an analysis of the present situation. We live in a world of hypocrisy. We live in a liberal market world, a global world with a lot of transportation of goods, like these Adidas boots I wear, science, even pornography, investment, capital, cars, whatever, move across borders. And we idealize the situation. We are favorites we love global market competition and all these goods we can buy and consume. The only ones not being able to, not being free to move, seem to be humans. How did it come that way? Why did that happen? Our ideals of free movement seem to be high-pitched and highly conflictual at the same time. Why should all things be allowed to move in and out of borders, but not humans? First, we have to think about that it looks a little bit crazy that it's like that way, because people have always been moving. Something like 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age, up here, where there was nothing called Denmark, but we still were around these geographical places where we now live, disappeared, the ice disappeared. And some reindeer hunters, they came out of sight with Germany and whatever they were placed in, not even called Germany. And they came up here, and later on people settled down. And sooner or later there was something grounded as Denmark. But it's not been here forever. Humans have always been moving. Actually, the cradle of mankind could be called Africa. Out of Africa, hypotheses about human transportation of themselves throughout the globe and over all kind of borders. We came out of Africa 150 to 200,000 years ago. And the species, humans, they were moving all around. We have never been settled one place. Traditionally, we conceptualize borders and boundaries as phenomena here to protect us. But I attended a sociology conference 3 years ago where the former Greek Minister of Finance, he gave a beautiful and very provocative speech to all the sociologists from the world. 3,000 of us were listening in a theater. He said, "I don't believe in borders. I do not believe in this mechanism by which one secures the legitimacy to do things in any European country. Borders are awful scars on the planet, and the sooner we dispose of them, the better." Tough words. The sooner we get rid of the borders, the better. So could we imagine like free communities where people could gather and independent of states, independent of borders? At least we could think about the US. There had been no US without harsh and tough and numerous migration of Europeans, not to forget of all our people from Asia and wherever. So if we are to consider a different kind of society, a society in which we could move, we could ask, will we come to experience it? What will happen? First of all, we could say the positive and negative scenarios, and we could talk about opportunities, and we talk about options, and also about different kind of obstacles. First of all, the negative one. The negative one is loaded with harsh scenarios. An example, climate refugees. If the water was growing like 10 meters, 60 meters over the present standard, there will be no Amager, no Copenhagen, no Netherlands. And will we see climate refugees, even from richer countries, moving, not only from Bangladesh. We'll see people moving around, being forced to move. Another future scenario can also be thought of. An example, if we have big data, automated production, and we are lacking jobs, people could move for jobs, try to move to be exploited, to sell their workforce for the highest paying, or even just somebody paying. And that'll be kind of leaving maybe even national surroundings where you were living for centuries or for your family for many generations, and will be forced to move due to lack of employment. But you could also imagine a more positive narrative, a more cosmopolitan, royal citizen-like way to organize our society. And we already see traces of that among youngsters now. We see countercultures, we see movements like Refugees Welcome, Extinction Rebellion, Climate Change Now, and so on. We see young people fighting to change the world right now. And we also have to think about what happened in the past. If you think about World War I, World War II, people, they were eager to go there to kill their fellow citizen from other country. Wollt ihr den totalen Krieg? And then you have to to embark the trains and go out to the front. And today people would probably better go to an interrail train to kiss a guy from Italy or kiss a girl from Germany. And I find that really progressive, that people are not that willing to go into stupid wars, but more into each other's hands. So we can hope for self-transcendence, peaceful solutions, and the art of dissentering. And all that could be the other narrative. On the other hand, we shouldn't forget that the riches and the wealth of the nations, they're very, very unevenly distributed. There will be a lot of obstacles here for free division of wealth and free division of land and so on. But if you look around the world from above an aeroplane, or just look around in Sweden or in Australia, there's plenty of land, Western Jutland. Well, nobody can tell us that there could not be some refugees there or asylum seekers. We have enough of land, but we also have private ownership over land. So many people, they are favoring this Festung Europa, where we protect our borderlines, protect our wealth and our privilege. But maybe we could also say that has to come to an end. We have to open up for our wealth and share it with other people. In some sense, there is something beautiful about the quote of Yanis Varoufakis. He says that it's a kind of wound that these boundaries are drawn across the world map. And he does not believe in these lines on the map. And maybe already now we have 7 billion people, but we might even be 12 or 15 in 50 years. Has, of course, to do with the birth pill and consolation and celibat and whatever. But basically, there is enough land, but how can we place all these people? How can they move? Basically, we are facing radical change. We are facing a world in which people will not stay where they are, where we will move even more, because humans have always been moving. We witness now both poverty seekers of going from more wealthy places more to the north. We see asylum seekers. We see people trying to get away from harsh dictatorships, from failed nations and all that. And we have here to quote another philosopher or thinker called Gilles Deleuze, a French philosopher. He says, "Do not become unworthy of what is happening to you." You cannot control the events and you cannot control the power of the world, but you try to act in such a way so you not become unworthy to what happens to you while you are working and thinking and living. So what I am actually maybe turning towards now is writing a kind of utopian and counterfactual history writing. It's against the logic of the dominance of the world market, the nationalism, the protectionism, the Trumpism and all that we have to think now. If we engage in counterfactual and utopian storytelling, we could say that it cannot continue like it is today with this investment and all this capital ownership placed on few hands. So how can we imagine another future? One way could be to look at it from another decennia, another millennium or something. Well, maybe let's just go 100 years in the future and look at us from 2120 or maybe 200 years, 2220 and say, well, those people back then in 2020, they were kind of stupid. They couldn't even solve primitive or simple problems. And maybe we have to, in a way, to think that there will be a time where we'll become world citizens, where we will have a constitutional logic that's maybe just not only patriotistic, but even cosmopolitan. Here we can gather and collect information and inspiration from the great German 19-year-old Jürgen Habermas, and he's a philosopher and sociologist. And he talks about constitutional patriotism, that you have to play by the rules under the same legislation, but you can live culturally and religiously very different from your fellow men. You're free to have all kind of eating habits, religious habits, cultural habits, but we still have to accept common rules to play by. And I think this constitutional patriotism, it has to become a constitutional cosmopolitanism in a kind, maybe not a world state, but in world connections, kind of connections with connectivity with one another. We have two failures right now in the political situation. One is the predominant metaphysical emptiness of liberalism, where we more or less have this free market of science, pornography, goods, and whatever, not of humans, which is kind of also destroying all kind of qualities of life. At the same time, we have a reaction towards that. That is national conservative values, which is in its toughest forms in Poland and Hungary these days, where you have a kind of a narrow-minded and short-sighted, self-centered and self-loving idea of your own nation, your own religion, and your own values. But neither national conservatism nor metaphysical empty liberalism can help us today. So, with these two modalities of actions, we are having two types of problems, and therefore we have to do counterfactual, utopian, visionary ideas and share them with one another. So, this was my essay.